This is Becoming Inclusive from the Kaleidoscope Group, where we're thinking differently about diversity, equity, and inclusion for more empowered people at work. We're committed to real change, and that begins with real conversations. Welcome in.
I'm Reggie Ponder, and this is Becoming Inclusive. We have had several episodes. We got to talk to a lot of people, and my co-host is back again, Catherine Potts. Hey, Kat, how are you?
Hey, I'm good, as always.
And when we talk about this series, this is our last series for the year, and we get to bring in our real co-host, because I think out of the 42, 43 episodes we've done, Mitch has probably done 40 of them. So I want to welcome back Mitch Brown. Mitch, man, it's so good to see you, man.
It's always a pleasure. And you know what I'll say? You know, it's a pleasure in the spring, in the summer, and now in the fall, Reggie. So, hey, Kat, hey, Reggie, let's do this thing.
Yeah. So one of the things that we talk about, that we started off this whole series is diversity is not enough, equity is not enough, inclusion is not enough. And what came to mind for me, and Mitch, this came to mind for me because you and I have talked about this on many occasions, that sometimes it seems like when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion, people just hope for the best. Not plan for it, just be like, well, I just hope that it all kind of works out in some kind of way. And since this is our last episode of this year's series, I kind of want to talk about that kind of attitude of people saying, yeah, I hope it works out. It just doesn't work out like that. We don't hope like that for any other business imperative that's out there, but we're going to kind of like, all right, I hope that something works here.
Yeah, well, listen, one, I just, again, I want to echo and say it's good to be back here because I think these topics are super relevant. And they should be ongoing conversations. And much like that attitude towards our approach towards, doing what we're doing, I think people need to understand and learn that, this work is really about a journey. You know, we talk to clients about that all the time. And when you're on a journey, you can make progress, which is important, right? But, the work is in some ways never ending. So when you're on a journey, think about it, Reggie. What do you need, right? You need resources and support to make the most of that journey. You need a sustained effort because if you don't have it, Reggie, you're not going to complete the journey. You're not going to progress. And you need to keep the course. And part of keeping the course is, as they say, keep your eyes on the prize and understand your North Star, where you're headed and why you're headed that way. And, I think that will, to me, circumvent some of those things that you talked about. And there are many different considerations for something like that. But, to me, that's important when it comes to this work.
I think, too, like another aspect that would be interesting to hear your thoughts on, Mitch, is sort of what are, not to scare any of our listeners, of course, but what are some, consequences from not staying the course, right? Not wanting to sustain what you've done or sustain a plan that you have yet put in action. But, 2 months ago, we're so gung-ho on putting into action.
And before you answer that, Mitch, because this is a really important question, but when you were talking about this whole thing about sustained effort, it made me think of Kat. It made me think about you because from a soccer perspective, we know that we can't just hope it to happen. There was a lot of real hard work that you had to put into, and you had a goal. When Mitch, you talked about this North Star, and for people who haven't listened to any of our podcasts, Kat was an accomplished soccer player, so put in a lot of miles on that soccer field. And Kat, does that ring a bell with you when what Mitch was talking about in terms of you can't hope it through, you have to have a sustained effort, you need to look at a plan and an outcome. Can you talk a little bit about that before Mitch jumps in?
Yeah, no, I mean, absolutely. And now I'm actually in training to become a yoga teacher. And it's that same aspect as with soccer is like there's so much effort that has to go into it. And not just inside the studio, outside, at home, after work, on the weekends. And for me, it's like there's times even when I was playing soccer where it's like when I could see myself falling back, it showed in how I was playing. It, affected some things for me in my, game. It affected, you could see how I wasn't doing so well in practice when I just kind of was like, lollygagging around and not staying focused and really focus on that North Star you're talking about. It really takes like 24/7 focus. And I know that's hard because we all have other stuff going on. It's not just DEI that you're focused on. For me, it's obviously not just soccer and yoga that I was focused on, but you do have to kind of bring 100% into like all those areas of things that are priorities.
And Mitch, I had to bring in the sports aspect because you and I talk sports all the time. But I always cringe when I start talking sports because of the two of us, meaning Kat and myself. She's the more accomplished athlete. But I really do see those parallels in sports when we talk about a journey.
Well, yeah. Well, let me address that first, which is, a huge sports person. And a journey could be something that's, the microcosm of that could be the season. It could be one's career. It could be, where I start in terms of my level of sophistication, that I'm a novice one day and one day I'm a more skilled, player like Kat, but the journey is really about, what you make it. And but nonetheless, I think in a lot of ways that you cut it, right, there is a journey to be appreciated. And much like that, I think you could say that that's true of this work and many other things that we do. And Kat, to answer your question, well, what happens when we don't, see it through? And, I do think I do. I mean, I have to admit, in the marketplace, when that happens, I'll tell you what I hear. People say that, well, our commitment wasn't genuine. Maybe we were just doing this because it was the flavor of the month, the flavor of the moment, which, could, especially in our work, could be something that's swayed a lot by, societal diversity concerns and things that lead people to believe that as companies, leaders, that they care. But again, when we don't see things through, that can have a opportunity to send a very conflicting message. And what it also does, to me, what I hear, and what I know is that, Reggie, you mentioned this earlier. It devalues. It really marginalizes the efforts of the work, and to me, that is a tough blow because this is what I do every day, right? And from that standpoint, I'm coming into your organization and I'm leaving. I come back and hang out with both of y'all. But a lot of times you got people in those organizations where, that may be, a huge blow to, their career, to how people see them. So I think it's, something that people need to appreciate, that there's more to it than just the idea of, hey, we're going to go in a different direction, or we're not putting the intent and the resources behind something to see it through. There's a lot of unintended consequence that comes out of that. Those are just two things. I mean, we could spend the whole time talking about a laundry list of things, but those are the big two things.
So when we started this whole thing, the whole podcast, I mean, we really did go through diversity is not enough. And I can't have you on without touching base on these three just for a moment, Mitch, is that when we just a short thought on why isn't diversity enough? Because at first, when we started this business, when people started in this business, it was all about diversity.
Well, I think that you have to understand that there are two layers to this. One, when we talk about diversity, inclusion, equity, belonging, unity, these are all words connected to the work out there. So diversity, in short, and one way to look at it, just really talks about representation. And to make things, really succinct and simple, that it's not enough to get diverse talent into your organization. Sure, some people struggle with that. But if you get diverse talent into your organization and you're really good at doing that, then, if you don't do anything else, then they won't feel included. They won't be engaged. It may be a waste of resources to bring people in and just have them leave for other opportunities. And you may be bringing them into situations where, again, maybe their experience isn't one of equity or equitable, and maybe it does nothing for your team cohesiveness, unity. So all those things are, to me, what happens in complement and conjunction when you think about our journey, right? We start with a vision of success for what the work should be. And, we develop, usually assess where we are between the vision and where we really are. And we develop some strategies to attack that. And the strategies are not just solely focused on diversity, but they're more so focused on all those things that I said. That's one angle. The last angle, Reggie, is that, diversity isn't enough, because it also has to, as we tell people, it feels good, it's the right thing to do, but it also has to make business sense. And I think this is where, when we go back to the original conversation of sustained effort, seeing it through, that correlation has to be clear. And where else in the business would you stop doing something that aids in your ability to, grow your bottom line or to fulfill your mission if you're a nonprofit or something like that? You wouldn't. So that's why, when you say diversity is not enough, for sure, it's definitely not.
And Kat, I know you're the co-host, but I have a question for you on this as well, is because you've been doing a lot with our speakers and people going out to talk to organizations. And Mitch, what was that?
Yeah.
Mitch, the listeners can't see what you just did. You waved at Kat for a reason. Why?
Oh, because when you said she's doing a lot with folks, that's me. That's me. I'm a part of those folks. But anyway, keep going.
We're partners in crime, me and Mitch.
and you have talked to me about that inclusion is not enough. What are your thoughts about that?
For me?
Yes.
My thoughts around that is, I think, so when we talk about inclusion not being enough, it's kind of objective, right? Because for you, what does it look like to be inclusive? You're just hiring a bunch of people and saying we're being inclusive of variety of demographics. That's not really inclusion if we're talking about the definition and what makes people feel like they have a place at your company. And it's not enough alone, because inclusion, just saying, okay, kind of similar to diversity, but if we're just going to hire a bunch of people, we're going to seem inclusive, we're going to include the different demographics and generations of people, we're just going to include them. We're just going to bring them all to the table, as you like to say, Reggie, but they're just going to sit there and we're just going to include them for sake of inclusion. That's not really capitalizing on potential talent. That's not really getting to understand the strengths and weaknesses of your employees and what they bring to the company. So just to kind of think about being inclusive at in a very shallow place, it alone doesn't mean you are creating equity. And then that's kind of the next thing, right? You're not creating that just because you're let's include everybody. We had an episode where we talked about, does too much inclusion lead to confusion?
Mitch, that was Mitch.
That was Mitch, exactly. And Mitch brought up this good point, which was okay, if we're just going to bring everybody into the room just for sake of inclusion, and I argued, well, people there could think that their opinion is more important than it actually is. All you did was include them. They could walk away feeling like what they thought or how they feel wasn't important. Nobody really cared. They just got included.
And Mitch, you're smiling, but this really comes back to something that we've talked about over and over again, about having a purpose for what you're doing. That there needs to be a strategy, just to kind of say, I'm doing something to do something. Okay, I've got some diversity people. I've done some inclusion, or I've done some inclusion work. And because this is a journey, it really does have to be a plan for what we're trying to do. That doesn't mean the plan can't be be revised. I heard somewhere where someone said the best plan is a plan that you're willing to alter, because you know that things are going to happen along the way. But it doesn't say the best plan is not having a plan.
Yeah, well, when you say that too, I think when you say a word like purpose, right? And that's what happens sometimes when you do things or start initiatives without true purpose. And to me, your plan needs to be ordained, right? It's got to be ordained steps for where you want to be as an organization. It has to be tied to something. Again, maybe it's the business imperative. Maybe it's our values. And that, to me, is what center and anchors it, and allows you to have, some teeth, so to speak. Otherwise, again, we've said it. It's just like, hey, I could be fair weather in the way that plan and is, whether or not it's going to be effective or whether or not it's going to be, followed through, as we're talking about. Like, it has to be something that has purpose. It needs to be ordained to a certain, value or those kind of things. Because also, Reggie, I think about when you say, behind the motivation, better word, of why people do things like this. If you're just doing it for face, or you're doing it for the outside world, or you're even doing it, as we talk about in our work, from a self-motivated interest, then you're going to run into some of those issues, right? And this work is really about a sense of altruism around consideration for other folks and of how we're showing up.
So I have to not push back, but I have to probe here, Mitch, because when you say ordained, that word means something different to different people. And so a lot of times you've used the word alignment. And so here you're using ordained. Help the listeners understand, what do you mean by ordained, and does it have any relevance or connection to alignment?
I just mean you got to order your steps, and not just, again, be doing something that is not connected to purpose. That's your word. I love that word, purpose. And then the motivation, right? Do you have the right ones? And that right there, to me, is going to allow one to order their steps in the right direction. And, if you have that sense of purpose and motivation, those are two of the qualities when we're talking about a journey in very analogous ways to sports, and whether it be DEI journey. I think you need that. You need that along the way.
Well, excellent. We cannot end. This is the last episode for the year, so we cannot end this episode without helping people. There's the to-do people, and there's the to-be people. The to-be people have a belief and work through their belief, and we've talked about those people. But there's a lot of to-do people. So I want either one of you guys to talk about, what should the to-do people and the to-be people be doing, because we're moving into 2023, and these things that we're talking about are serious, because they really do impact the bottom line. So it looks like you want to jump in there first, Mitch, but talk about the to-do.
I'm going to jump in first.
Okay, go ahead, Kat.
I just want to add something. I think too, regardless of which one of those type of people you are, also I think there's something to be said around the options of how you can start or how you can keep going. I think sometimes it can really be scary when journey can be kind of scary for some people, right? But there's other options. There's other things that you can do, other places that you can start. And Mitch, I'll let you jump in now, and you can talk about some of those ways with whatever you were going to say before I jumped in. But I just wanted to point that out, is that it doesn't have to be scary or seem daunting or seem like you're overwhelmed by this, right? It doesn't need to be that way. There's a lot of different options and different ways you can start, continue, maintain your efforts.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I don't really have much to add to that. I was smiling for a different reason, because when Reggie said we had to help people out, I thought he was going to go Oprah on us and start giving away cars. I didn't know. I knew we were close to the holiday season, so I didn't know what Reggie had up his sleeve. So that's why I was like, "Oh, wait a minute, listeners, are you going to get something out of Reggie today?" But no, Kat, I agree with you. Again, And I think even in these, our opportunities to get together and have these conversations, I bring some thoughts to this, but I learned just as much from both of you. So I just know, this being one of our last things for the year, just wanted to appreciate, some of that insight and let some of that insight breathe, sometimes because I think sometimes the listener also can, as we share, right, I want to make sure that, that gets proper airtime, and that specific thing that you just said, I'd wholeheartedly agree with.
I really like that, Mitch, this whole thing about allowing concepts to breathe, because many times we do jump, just in general, just from all of our conversations, we jump from the next thing to the next thing to the next thing, and we don't give proper time for stuff to settle, to think about, and all that. I love that. I do want to, though, get back to the to-do people, because both of you guys are working with organizations all the time, and they're looking for the next thing to do. They're always looking, and you know this, Mitch, because they're like, so what should we do? What should we do? What should we do? And I think that the biggest thing that people should do is, as we try to direct them into 2023, is first thing, review. I think they really need to review what they've done in their efforts. Where are they? I think that when they do that kind of review, is that's that time that, to me, when you talk about letting it breathe, I think sometimes we review so quickly. We be like, oh, this, and this, and then we move to the next thing.
Yeah, so way too fast.
Mm-hmm. I think we need to the first step is review. Any thoughts on that, team?
Well, yeah. I mean, one is, okay, also, can we appreciate what we've done, right? A lot of times, that's also part of a journey that, you can oftentimes look back and see how far you've come, and that can be motivation to keep going, because sometimes there's this like illustration of this guy, he's got an axe pick, right? He's just digging, and what he's looking for is on, he's getting there, but he's been digging so long that he just doesn't feel like it's going anywhere. And when he decides to stop, he's just this close away. So that appreciation of what we've done, I think, is important just for that sake. But then also, as you saying, Reggie, I think it just provides an opportunity to think about, what we do going forward. So another thing I would say is, remember, we talk about be strategic, right? We've talked about that in our conversations. I have clients now that are, thinking about more forwardly around what their programming looks like for the year. And, when you order those steps, as I said, you can understand why we do things at certain times, what we want to focus on, and what that is. And I think a healthy, lastly, assessment of the things you have done. So you got appreciation of it. And then a healthy assessment about, okay, well, what do we gain from it, right? Did it take us towards our goals, or did it take us away, right? And those kind of adjustments need to be made to say, what can we do more of, right? And what things do we need to modify? And I like the what to do people, right? I like those folks because they got good zeal, and it's their energy a lot of times that moves this work forward and keeps this on the radar and pulse of folks who might not have it on their radar. So I think it's just about those things for me when you talk about the to-do people.
Yeah, and you make me think about the other thing after you do all that is to also look for innovation in what you've done. Is that I think that next step is there's always something that you can do that might not be the run of the mill. And what I mean by that is that sometimes we just do these straight programs without looking at how do we integrate those in the other aspects all the other aspects of our business. And that's innovative for many organizations, because a lot of times we keep that DE&I as siloed as possible. And we don't think about how it really bleeds over into almost every other area in our company. When I was on the marketing side, a lot of times the DE&I effort would just be over there, but they wouldn't talk to us marketing folks about how we could integrate that, or how we could bolster that, and how we could help that effort along. So I think that whole thing of integrate and innovate, you could do that as well.
I think one thing to highlight as well is when you talk about taking time to appreciate and like actually taking time to let things breathe and review, also take time to ask your employees, how do they feel? Include that in the review. Get a pulse check. How are people perceiving what you're doing? Because even if you're in the stage of where you are just still at the leadership stage, are people even noticing that's going on? Do people know that you've even started your initiative? Right? Do people know, depending on how slow you're going? Just kind of take a pulse check and see, are our employees, do they feel like they are along for the ride, or are they just watching us do things?
I like that. You kind of remind me of the podcast we did with Mary, where she talked about benchmarking, and doing external benchmarking versus doing internal benchmarking. I really love the thinking that she brought to the table with that, because everybody likes to do external, but that internal benchmarking seemed to be, it was such a really interesting way to look at
exactly.
To look at that. So I love it. We did so many episodes. I think this is the 43rd one, and I just want to say, Mitch, man, in 2023, this is what I'm thinking.
No, it's not going to say Mitch, co-host.
That's what I was thinking. But okay, fine. If you
Reggie,
don't know,
you can't be. Kat's got the co-host position. I like
you,
being,
Mitch.
I like, what do you call somebody who drops in on a show? I'm a resident. I like being a resident of the Pots and Ponder Hour. Okay, the Pots and Ponder Hour. I'm a resident voice.
I'm going to totally take that. I want to thank you. I want to thank Mitch Brown for joining us once again. We want to wish that as you move forward in your DE&I journey, that hopefully we've been able to impart some wisdom, some knowledge, give you some nuggets to move forward in what you are doing. And Mitch, say thank you again. Kat, as usual, we'll start back up in 2023, but I'd like to thank both of you guys for your partnership, your leadership, and your thoughts.
And listeners, please share. It is the end of this first season, so more important now than ever, let us know your thoughts on the different episodes. We really want to use that to cultivate an even better season 2.
Thanks for joining us, and a special thanks to our subscribers. Consider becoming one today. Becoming Inclusive is presented by the Kaleidoscope Group, your full-service diversity, equity, and inclusion partner serving clients worldwide. Learn more and continue the conversation at kgdiversity.com.